to the PowerCat Game Day postgame. Corey Dean, John Kurtz, Cole Menbeck, and gentlemen, what a weird, ugly, kind of crazy game. And I don't know, kind of staggering to the end of this season with guys out and injury and shorthanded and people playing in positions that they weren't expected to be playing in. At times I didn't know that we were going to get all the way through a 10-game season, but man, 69-31 is not exactly how you expected this one to end. There's a little bit of glimmer of hope there in the third quarter where K-State scores, and you're like, hey, maybe you're going to get back into this one. And then Texas practically runs a kickback for a score, and it called down on the one, jams one in, but a 35-point third quarter for the Longhorns seals it up for K-State. This one was a little bit tough to watch. I know you weren't necessarily expecting K-State to come out and beat Texas, but John, were you more than a little bit shocked at the final score?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It could have been a lot worse. I think Tom Herman took it easy on K-State at the end there. I mean, they could have easily set the all-time record against K-State if they wanted to, and push that thing closer to 80, which, I mean, it's a tough thing for me to reconcile. I understand that the message after the game from Chris Kleiman was, in a lot of ways, hey, we're just so depleted on defense, and they are. They had already moved Elijah Sullivan to safety going into the game, which tells you what kind of status things were back there. I think some of that is trying to find somebody else other than Ross Elder at safety, and he's one of those scapegoats the fans gets frustrated with. But Elijah Sullivan goes out like 3 plays into the game. Jerron McPherson, your other safety, goes out, isn't playing for the second half when things got really, really bad. And obviously they're missing a couple other players here or there. The linebackers, Sullivan, Hughes, they're just coming back from, let's not go on and on. There are a number of guys that we all know. Will Jones is transferred, a number of reasons why they're depleted. But, man, I don't think that covers with a blanket statement for me, giving up 69 points and Texas having over 10 yards per play and over 4 yards per drive. I mean, it was just – those are gaudy, insane numbers. And, it's just kind of the end of the season has been as bad as it possibly could have been, where you've had – close, excruciating losses, games that you should have won, and then a couple games where it just is embarrassingly bad. So, to me, this one's all about trying to reconcile how much stock you put into, hey, this is such an asterisk year because it's COVID and everything that's happened, which I certainly do. But I also didn't think that we'd be dealing with 2 games like Iowa State and then Texas, where it's just gotten completely non-competitive and looks about as bad as anything you've seen.
Yeah, I think we had a pretty good idea of going into this game. We thought we would know where this game was going to go by just watching the first quarter. And when you watch Texas go right down the field, the very first drive, they looked locked in and focused. We were wondering what the mindset would be of the Longhorns, potentially a lame duck coach and Tom Herman, a lot of distractions coming off the Iowa State loss that they had the week before. And they looked locked in. Credit to Texas. It was really K-State that did not look entirely focused, did not look entirely there. I'm not going to say it was all an effort issue. Texas is clearly a very talented team, but they had not done that to any opponent this year by any means. That offense was kind of middle of the pack, Big 12, right around 40th in the country in points per drive and efficiency. And, they hadn't run the ball nearly like that. And I granted Bijan Robinson obviously is a very talented back, true freshman who was one of the top running back recruits in the entire country. But, the way Kansas State just inability to stop the run or really stop anything was quite shocking to watch the way that game came out. And every time K-State scored a touchdown to get back within 2 scores, a 14-point game, you just kept thinking, can they at least just get one stop and put a little pressure on Texas and make them feel a little heat of the game? And it just felt like 2 or 3 plays later, Texas has another touchdown every single time it occurred. I credit to the K-State offense. They could have been demoralized. Every time they scored, Texas went right back down the field and scored. K-State kept responding up until, near the end of the third quarter when things just got out of hand. But, the K-State defense just could not come up with a play. And then special teams was uncharacteristically poor in that game. Multiple returns, K-State not kicking the ball out of the end zone, Squibb kicking it even when they had the wind at their back. Just some things that we don't typically see out of a K-State football team. And, we've been critical. I've been critical of Courtney Messingham in the offense, but the last 2 games, 31 points in each game against respectable defenses. that's good enough to get the job done. And if you would have told me going into that game that K-State would have over 270 yards rushing and average 6 yards per carry and win time of possession by 11 minutes, I would have thought they would have won. It's just that's the best run defense in the Big 12, Texas. And K-State dominated them up front and really ran the ball well. So credit to the offense. The defense just completely fell off a cliff at the end of the season, and they actually are going to finish the year 9th in the Big 12 in pass efficiency defense, 9th in yards per carry allowed. Only KU was worse, and that's what's odd. It felt like the defense was the strength of this team until really the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think if you're going to try to flip this and try to find some positives, it starts to turn into, some individual performances. I think that we're pretty good on offense. Obviously, Duke was fantastic and looked like a star and was the star of the broadcast as far as the broadcast team was concerned. And Malik Knowles kind of out of nowhere, 2 touchdowns, 6 catches, and looks pretty good as well. So as you try to start, there's no fun way to spend 5 losses going out on a season. That's not fun. But is this a team that you think has showed some flashes, some building blocks to some places where they might be able to go? This is a weird year with a lot of attrition, some transfers and other things like that happening too, John, but where are kind of some of your bright spots as you try to look forward?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Like Malik being better the last 2 games is encouraging. His production the last 2 games easily trumps what he had put together the entire season before that. So, that's nice and that's positive. I think right now it sounds like there's a good chance that he may be back when it didn't feel like that was going to be the case earlier this year. So that makes you feel better about the offense. I don't think Deuce is going anywhere. His dad had a nice tweet after the game about Chris Kleiman, the direction of the program. So I don't think there's anything to worry about. That's nice. There's some good building blocks there. I do think the offensive line started to get better. A lot of the questions now are going to come down to what seniors are they going to get to stick around, and that starts with Skyler on offense and what's going to happen there, because I've definitely shifted based on how things have gone here with Will over the last month plus of the season to being in the camp of, hey, it would be nice if Skylar Thompson came back next year. And then guys on defense all over. That's the thing. It's a little tougher right now with that game so fresh in your mind to think like, all right, who do you want back on defense? But I think that's going to indicate a lot as far as what next year is going to look like. Does Jerron McPherson come back? Does Drew Wiley come back? Maybe an AJ Parker, linebackers, Elijah Sullivan, and Cody Fletcher in particular. We're talking about how good this team is actually going to be next year as opposed to just long term. Like, those are the questions that are going to need to be answered and that are going to tell us a lot. I know the vibe right now in college football is these coaches feel like they're basically going to have to re-recruit their entire roster now because everybody gets the free year coming up in January to leave. So, I think that is really where my attention turns to next for this team and how things are going to play out.
They certainly can't afford a lot more attrition, especially on the defensive side of the football. And they're going to have to land some guys that can play right away. Obviously, everyone's going to be able to play right away, but they're going to have to land a few transfers to probably fill some holes at the safety, linebacker position in different areas of the defense, especially. Could probably use something at the receiver spot as well. They've lacked explosiveness there all year. Shabastin Taylor got hurt yesterday, too. That didn't help matters. I think if you want to look at the positive, I think John hit on it some. Obviously, I don't think Deuce Vaughn is going to go anywhere. That's about the most mature freshman I've ever seen play college football, most humble kid you could ever imagine. He's just special talent on and off the field. I think he'll stay. His dad is very level-headed, and I think as a result, Deuce is very level-headed, and I think he'll stay with the program that stuck with him and gave him that scholarship opportunity and played him so much as a true freshman. Malik Knowles, obviously you feel good that these last 2 games, he's had a tough year, a tough offseason as well. You feel good that he finished on a high note. Again, though, I look on the sideline yesterday with him. He's having such a great game, and they're on offense. I don't see him on the field, and he's with the trainer again on the sideline in the third quarter. And, can he just stay healthy? That's the thing. Can you count on him to stay healthy game in and game out? But, the thing I probably feel the best about, guys, is I thought the offensive line has come together as the season has unfolded, especially these last few weeks. And if you look up front, all those guys, as long as, we talk about transfers, who knows who's going to transfer, but almost all of those guys are sophomores or younger, other than Noah Johnson at the center position. They have a ton of talent on the interior of the offensive line, even guys that didn't play this year that are just freshmen. They're going to have a very good interior offensive line. And if Carver Willis, who played some yesterday at left tackle, who's a true freshman, or Whit Mitchum, a kid they landed in last recruiting year, who's 6'7", about 270 pounds, if they can beef him up, I know they think highly of him. If they can get one of those tackles to become an elite offensive tackle, coupled with Christian Duffy or Leviston at the other end, I think you feel pretty good about the offensive line going forward. I think they've got the right guys. I think Connor Riley's got his group, and now they're going to really start to gel. They're going to have probably a more normal offseason going into next year. They've got Deuce Vaughn in the backfield. You look at it, they ran for over 225 yards 3 of the last 4 games. And over these last 2 games, they ran for 530 yards and averaged 6.5 yards per carry. And like I mentioned, Baylor's defense is a decent defense, and Texas was the best run defense in the Big 12. So that's where I start to feel good that they can dominate the line of scrimmage, at least on the offensive side of the ball, and get to running the offense they want.
Well, it's a weird year. Obviously, I think there were points where we all didn't think that you get 10 games in. Bowl season is still kind of a giant question mark for everyone, especially since there's really no rules for bowl season. It's anybody the Bulls want to take and anybody who wants to accept an invitation. I know it's weird on a 5-loss kind of collision course towards the end and a 4-6 team to talk about bowl season, but if the invitation is extended, do you think K-State goes to one just so that they can get some of those extra weeks of practice and some more reps in for what's a very young team?
Yeah, they will. I mean, that's been the pretty consistent message from Gene Taylor and Chris Kleiman over the last week or so. And I mean, I think that's the right answer. It's a tough one because I really have no interest in watching a bowl game. I mean, this team has been through a lot this year. It's been an exhausting season for the kids. You know, Deuce Vaughn gave a pretty politically correct answer about, hey, we of course would be excited to go play, you know, in a bowl game and play one more time with these guys. I would imagine truth serum to most of the players. Do you really want to keep worrying about the protocols as strictly as you've been having to do all season to go play a bowl game against? I mean, who knows who the opponent is actually going to be? You're not going to get the typical bowl game experience of hanging out for a week and doing a bunch of fun things with your teammates. It's going to be much more like just get in, play the game, get out. So you lose a lot of the value of what the bowl game really is to the players anyway. And for fans, again, it's not like fans are going to be sharing in this experience. It's not like this has been a season that everybody really wants to extend here. So there's all these reasons why it's like, okay, awesome. But the practice time is valuable because they've had, if you do the cumulative math, I think it's like upwards of 70 players now that have tested positive at one point in time. And so every time that's happened, and other guys even beyond that just were contact traced, you're missing a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is of practice. So there's been a lot of cumulative practice time that's been missed throughout the season. So they'll want to recoup that and work as much as they can with those guys. And totally get it. You're also keeping them around the facility longer instead of going home and being around family and people who may be in their year if you're thinking about transferring and that sort of thing. Like, I think there are a lot of advantages to it. It's just when it comes down to the actual game itself, like I hope if they can win and at least stem some of the negative energy that's come down over the last 6 weeks with a 5-game losing streak, that would be helpful. That would be helpful if they can.
Yeah, John, I think that's the thing. I mean, obviously the practice time and getting some of these young guys some repetition in practice. And Chris Kleiman said he wanted to do that several weeks ago when they had their bye week, but so many of the young guys, due to contact tracing, weren't able to practice. So they weren't able to get them the reps that they wanted in practice during that bye week before the Iowa State game. You hope you can use that these next couple weeks to get those guys some more experience. And then at the same time, you hope you could win the game and just flush out this 5-game losing streak kind of out of your heads and go into the offseason with a little bit of momentum and positive feelings, knowing that or hoping that 2021 will likely be a better year than 2020. And you get to a little bit more normalcy with routines and everything as the vaccines get rolled out with COVID and the pandemic hopefully starts to subside a little bit. But we've seen a lot of opt-outs in college football this year across the board. And I would expect not just at K-State, but everywhere in the country that there'll be a significant increase in that leading up to a bowl game for just what you mentioned, John. I think a lot of guys are kind of ready to check out. It's been a long few months for them. They don't want to follow the protocols probably much longer. They want to go home for the holidays and just be with family and get a little break from this. And the bowl experience, like you said, isn't what it is normally. You're just going to go in, play a game, and get out. There's not going to be fans or very minimal fans there. You're not going to go have the trip where you're there for 5 days and having a lot of fun and some experiences that are a little bit more unique. So as a result, I think there's going to be some guys that opt out, especially guys with NFL aspirations. I'm not going to name names, but I would expect K-State would be no different than anyone else, and they'll have some guys that choose not to play in a bowl game. But you hope you have enough that you can play, be competitive, get a win, and just get into the spring and get to a more normal 2021.
Well, I think too, I wonder how much watching Derek Kerstetter at Texas affects that too, for anybody that was on that field, Texas included, but obviously K-State there also. So Kerstetter is a guy, Brian Davis from the Austin American Statesman had mentioned on the radio show this week that he had an injury, was nursing an ankle injury, and thought about just opting out the rest of the season, not pushing in on the injury, and he plays, and the guy winds up with his foot facing the wrong way in the game and has a compound fracture and a broken ankle. I mean, just a long, arduous rehab ahead of him for going and playing in that game. So yeah, I wonder if that may have an effect on some of that too.
I think those are all fair question marks for a lot of teams. As you look forward toward the end of the Big 12 season, you're going to get the rematch, Clones Sooners in the title game. Iowa State won the first one a very long time ago, as it was, I think, their second conference game, something like that. I mean, it's been a minute. This is a totally different OU team at this point in the season. We talked at length when it happened that not only Iowa State getting a win over Oklahoma, but K-State getting a win over Oklahoma. You played them with a young quarterback at the right time. Who do you like? Clones, Sooners in the rematch coming up here in a couple weeks in Dallas.
Man, I mean, it's tough to pick against Iowa State the way that they're playing right now. But Oklahoma, I still feel like it's just been a team on a mission. So I would anticipate that Oklahoma is going to keep rolling through West Virginia next week and get to the game feeling good about themselves and keep pushing forward. It wasn't the most impressive or inspiring performance for them against Baylor, just catching some bits and pieces there. But it's felt like the whole time, ever since Oklahoma got the Texas win and kind of got back on their feet, that this is where it was all headed toward. And so I think Oklahoma will be supremely motivated for that game, which probably doesn't happen a lot of times when they're playing Iowa State. And to me, that makes the difference. And so my lean would still be with Oklahoma, but 42-6 yesterday over West Virginia. It's hard to argue with what Matt Campbell and Iowa State are doing.
It was impressive by Iowa State yesterday. I thought that'd be a much more competitive game, but it wasn't. Iowa State's really got things rolling right now. If you would have asked me last week, I would have thought Oklahoma would roll Iowa State. I think it'll be much more competitive now as I watch things unfold, but I still can't see Iowa State beating Oklahoma twice in the same year, Lincoln Riley losing to the same opponent multiple times in the same season. I think OU is on a mission, like John said. I know they weren't particularly sharp last night, looked a little bit lackadaisical, and that's going to happen at times. But I think they'll refocus. I don't know if West Virginia is going to give them much of a battle now after watching what they did yesterday. I think they'll win that game, and then they'll be very locked in for the game against the Cyclones. The one advantage that Iowa State might have is the simple fact that Oklahoma has to play next week against West Virginia, while Iowa State's got a bye week and 2 weeks to prepare for OU. So that's one thing that, we know that might give Iowa State a bit of an advantage. But at the end of the day, I think Oklahoma will win. But John's dream of Iowa State getting 5 losses is dead now, unfortunately.
It is. Too bad. Too bad.
Well, so we've snuck in a little Chiefs talk and NFL talk at the end of all these because Cole's already geared up for Chiefs game day every time. You get the night game, Chiefs Broncos, 13.5 is the line. I have no doubts that Kansas City beats Denver, although they get their quarterbacks back this week, so they don't have to run the single wing. But do you like the Chiefs to cover 13.5 tonight versus Denver?
I mean, it's such a big line that like sometimes that does get tricky, backdoor cover sort of a thing. But I would lean that way. I really would. I didn't even know what Denver's quarterback situation was, to be honest with you, until you just said that right now. So
not great. It's back to normal. Still not great.
back to normal. Then, like, have these guys practiced?
Yeah, like Drew Lock should be starting for Denver.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know, Cole. I'll lean Chiefs here, but it's a big enough line, and we've seen, like, last week, Kansas City can be very focused and look like they're going to totally roll, and then kind of let some teams back into games. I don't think that Drew Lock is Tom Brady, even 2020 Tom Brady, but I think that possibility is still out there for a backdoor cover.
Yeah, I mean, I always, anytime a 10-point plus line, I would be nervous about, especially in the NFL, and actually putting my money on physically. But, I think the Chiefs will probably cover, 13 and a half. The Broncos offense has struggled really all year. And I guess if I'm looking at it, I'm having a hard time seeing Denver score more than maybe 17, 20 points. And I think you can typically assume the Chiefs are going to score 30 plus, even though I know Denver's defense has been, had some moments where they've been pretty respectable this year. But I mean, the Chiefs, I didn't even feel like they played that well offensively last time when they played in Denver, but because of special teams and the defense and turnovers by Denver, the Chiefs won by 20 plus in that game. And I would expect that the Chiefs will come in focused tonight and come out with a cover. I know a lot of people were wondering probably the Sunday Night Football moved this game off primetime because the Broncos struggles, but I don't think any TV network, when they get a chance to have Patrick Mahomes, is gonna move him off the primetime slot. I think he brings that much value.
I think you're exactly right. That's it's like when you get the chance to put the Lakers on TV, you put the Lakers on TV, right? So it's the same kind of thing. People showing up for the Mahomes show, and I fully expect them to cover 14. Denver's terrible right now, and they should be tanking intentionally to try to draft a better quarterback. Well, that's going to do it, gentlemen. If we have a bowl game, we'll knock out a bowl game. It's been a weird season. I think John put it right when he was like, hey, this is not the season that anybody expected. And what wild highs and lows to go from ranked and winning 4 in a row to losing 5 in a row at the end of the season. It's just been kind of it's been a weird trip, man. And I think that most K-State fans are right there at this point in the season. So you guys have a good weekend. Keep everybody healthy, and we'll talk to you both soon.
All right. Sounds
Thanks,
good.
Corey.